Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Heineken. Oh, it's been hot here in Los Angeles. You know, I didn't really get a chance to do much outdoor activity this past weekend because such was the temperature. The only thing that really kept me cool was just, once I got to happy hour, it was just Heineken time. It was a cold, crisp, condensation coming off of it, Heineken, just to get me into the night, get me out of this 100-degree weather that we were having out here over Labor Day weekend. There's nothing that kind of just signals it's party time like Heineken. Heineken Original Lager is made with pure malt and their famous A yeast, which makes Heineken an all-season, all-the-time kind of beer. Pick up a pack or have it delivered today and drink responsibly. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Quibi. If you're looking to wind down with unique content, look no further than Quibi, a new streaming platform that offers fresh, original shows like Wireless, a survival thriller set in the Colorado mountains. Follow Andy Braddock, played by Ty Sheridan, as he is forced to brave the elements with nothing but his phone to keep him alive. Download Quibi from the App Store now to catch the premiere of Wireless on September 14th. That's Quibi, spelled Q-U-I-B-I.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me on the other line, he's been saying that fear is the mind killer. It's Andy Greenwald!
I can't wait to talk spice with you, buddy.
Oh, Andy, yes or no question.
Okay.
Would you rather live on Dune or in Los Angeles right now?
Couple points before we get the binge mode squad on our necks. I don't think, is Dune a place?
Yeah, Dune's a planet, homie.
I thought it was like Arrakis or
yeah,
Araco.
It's also AKA Dune. Like in
that's the nickname?
In the streets, we're like, yo, that's Dune.
Did you just big time me, Spice Lord? Oh my God. Okay, let's back this up. Great to be back. Hope everyone had a nice Labor Day weekend. Great to see you. I miss doing a podcast. This is terrific. That said, a little context. The other day, the trailer for Denis Villeneuve's new film, Dune, I believe it's pronounced in a Montreal Quebecois accent, was released. And I watched it, had some thoughts that we're going to share with all of you on this, our twice weekly pop culture podcast.
Uh-huh.
But I was so quick with the content. I was sending Chris like handmade DIY ready for Etsy memes with like the Spice Worm and Bob Woodward. And I was like, it was all happening. You know what I mean? Like I was just generating free content for my number one boy. And this is how I get repaid is Chris pops on the mic. First, I'm like, should we get started? And then the next response from Chris is, Kaya and I have been here waiting for you. Okay, fine. I'll take the hit. 2, You're trying to big time me about Frank Herbert's Dune, a book that I had many chances to check out from many school libraries, but never did. You
Look,
haven't
all
read
I'm
it either.
saying is Arrakis is informally known as Dune. You know what? You're getting at a very interesting point, though.
The other thing is, since this is just an audio podcast these days, no one could see your eyes go slack as you Googled planet on Dune in the background while I monologued.
No, I didn't. I was responding to a text message about the Philadelphia Eagles while you were talking. Which one are you more upset about?
This is your job, sir.
No, I do what I always do, which is like if it seems like somebody is like really hitting me up. You've done this before when I've been on the rewatchables when you're hitting me up and I'm just like, oh, give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
okay.
My point
is,
the point I was trying to make was just this. I feel like I like you have never read Dune. My mom read Dune, has read like all the books like multiple times. They've always been in my house.
That's so cool that your mom did that.
I know. And
it.
like they've been in like 1 in 6 vacation houses that I've ever been in, which would be like 6, I guess. They are always like sort of littered around. They have been throughout my life. It's always been around. I've seen David Lynch's film. I feel like I have a grasp of what Dune is about. I'm in my sweet spot. Not only is this probably my favorite sort of active filmmaker right now,
right.
Denis Villeneuve making this movie, but I have the perfect relationship to this content.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know what happens, so I don't have to be like, I don't want to know. Like I've basically even spent like the last 2 months shutting myself off from Tenet talk. No Tenet talk for me, unless it's George Tenet. You know what I mean? And
yes. Then dropping mind jewels.
Yeah.
About the invasion of Iraq.
And I'm pretending like I'm just not going to know anything. I'm trying to go to fresh eyes and Tenet. Dune, I watched this trailer 5 times already, man. I know what's up with this. And I also just know the beats. I'm so excited for it. I think, Denis, you got to call me and Andy when you want to put a song in your trailer. That's my main note. If I have a note, it's like 2009 dubstep pop belongs nowhere near Arrakis. And I say that as someone who has not read the book.
Well, I also think that the worst thing that Westworld has given us outside of the television show Westworld is absolutely this already tired trope of slowcore covers of popular songs to
that's on Fincher though. That's on Fincher.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Well, okay. Can I blame Westworld though? Because
Sure.
I like Fincher more.
Yes.
I think that big picture, I mean, I'm with you. I don't really understand it. I saw the Lynch movie and I still don't understand it. I think that if there is one concept that makes, in the extended Duneverse, that makes this actually super relevant for 2020, it's the idea of a pain box, because I think that collectively we have been living in one. And so that moment in the trailer where she's like, Timothy, I will hold this syringe to your
Charlotte
neck.
Rampling, yeah.
And you will experience agony. I was like, okay, fine. Sign me up. There is a thin dusting of ash on my car, and I had to explain to my children today that Halloween is canceled. But please,
tell
me more. Tell me more about the spice worms.
How did the Halloween cancellation go?
Oh, went great. Thanks for asking. Yeah, it's good. It's
no,
good.
I'm actually asking. I feel like,
yeah, not great. Not great. I don't have the wherewithal to connect the cancellation of their favorite holiday directly with the groups of steroidal, hormonal 20-somethings meeting on the beach this weekend and pouring themselves welcoming shots of tequila.
Damn, Kai, he's talking about you.
I can't do all the work for them, but I do think there's a connection, and I'm not angry about it. But look, this movie was not something I was anticipating in the abstract. Because if you told me there was a movie coming directed by Villeneuve with these actors in it, I would want to see it. What I didn't anticipate, and again, this is just us talking off trailers, which we've been doing since the beginning, so I think it's fair. My takeaway from this trailer is that this is best case scenario big budget movie making, full stop, for 2020.
Yeah.
If you accept certain things, which Villeneuve seems to have accepted, which is the only things that are going to get made on a large scale are genre stories, probably fantasy or sci-fi, heroes' tales based on pre-existing IP. Fine. If you're going to have to, bend it at least so the marketing team can do exactly what they did with this trailer, basically say, look, we're doing Star Wars again, kind of, which is what it basically
Boy in
does.
the desert finds his destiny.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
If you accept those parameters and then you just wild out with one of the most exciting casts assembled in recent cinematic history, and you appear to, anyway, have taken the same kind of imaginative leaps with the visual storytelling and production design that you can when the purse strings have been open to the degree that they have by meeting all the previous criteria, right? Like, this trailer was inspiring to me. I don't mean like because I want to make another story about a boy hero on a sand planet. I just mean I want to go to a movie theater when it's safe to do so and experience something on this scale. And I don't think you could ask for more.
That's the only bittersweet part about that. You're right. Denis went to both Warner Brothers. He went up to Jack Warner and he said, give me the money. And then he went up to Kurt Warner and he said, give me the money. And he went and spent all the money on the planet.
And then he went... then he went to Pop Warner and he said, give me the small helmets and then he went children.
Yes.
Come on, give me more.
I was
How
just going
fast can you do this?
Revise it by saying he went to character actor Jack Warner.
Yes. Anybody else?
But I can't think of another Warner off the top of my head, but
that's a damn shame.
He got most of No Country for Old Men back together for this movie, and we don't even know. Tommy Lee Jones might voice the worm. It's entirely in play.
He went to Werner Herzog, who said, nope, I don't spell it that way. Keep going.
He found out that Baby Yoda's name is actually Barry Warner, and he went up to him. He was just like,
listen.
No. I'm really excited for it. The thing that's bittersweet is we don't know when we're going to see it, and we don't know which way we're going to see it. I cannot imagine. I think we saw Wonder Woman got pushed a little bit or indefinitely, I guess, again. Tenet, quote unquote, underperformed, I guess, compared to what, like I get it's obviously we're just not going to be back in theaters anytime soon. And this is a film like Tenet that I think everybody deserves to see in a theater. So I really have no idea when we're actually going to get to see this.
And I can wait. I can wait. Sure. It looks really good. I don't think that it's going to hurt them to have more time to fiddle with it or perfect it or edit it or whatever else they feel they need to do, get the CG shots where they want them to be. It just seems really to be infused with a spirit of creativity, like from the casting to just those little glimpses of what combat looks like in this world.
Yeah.
It's a little thing. And then we can move on to trying to, Google other famous people whose names are Warner. But when I was rewatching Black Panther the other week from when we talked about Chadwick Boseman on the pod, I really appreciated the second time around just the integration of, and this is going to sound really grandiose, but the integration of artistic influences and cultural influences and global influences into the tech, into the sci-fi, into the CGI. So it didn't just feel like the same old thing. Like this sort of like sand table nanobite stuff that Shuri uses in it. And it's just cool. And I was thinking about how we still talk about the way computers worked in Minority Report, even though, now we live in that movie. And also that movie was 18 years ago. If you're going to do it big. And that's what is exciting about this movie that, to your point, who knows when we'll see. Should we mention, just to cheer you up, because I know that this is something that was on your mind. You're bummed about maybe not seeing Dune for a while, and you've limited yourself to one off-planet adventure per year.
That's true.
Should we talk about the return of Mando?
I'm excited for it.
You mentioned Yodes.
So that's coming October 30th. So we'll enjoy that one for 4 whole days.
Well, one of those days will not be taken up by trick-or-treating.
That's right. So you got more Mandalorian time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That seems like it's going to be bearing a lot of weight, huh? I was going to bring up to you the Walking Dead announcing that it was going to be wrapping up production after, I guess, 30 more episodes that they've left. And then they're still going to do a Carol and Daryl spinoff. And then they'll probably have another anthology series or other things coming out of that. And how much Walking Dead has now come to kind of encapsulate or swallow up basically AMC. I mean, according to Bloomberg, it was responsible for like a third of its advertising base in 2018, at least. So I can only imagine. Not that in any way Disney is relying on Mandalorian, but because their theater slate has been so disrupted, and Mulan obviously went into on demand, and you can listen to The Big Picture with the Binge Mode guys talking about that this week. Mandalorian is like pretty important now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
We don't have anything else in that regard.
It's not just because of their movie slate. It's also because
they couldn't get the Marvel movie stuff out either.
Well, there's the Marvel shows. So this fall was going to be I'm sure they had told their investors like Disney Plus is going to be doing a lot better because we're going to have this infusion of, well, not only the Marvel shows, which are all still in production, or at least some have gone back to production. Loki in Atlanta, Falcon and Winter Soldier was filming in Europe. But the other thing to remember is that there's a long tail to this problem. Black Widow was supposed to be in theaters this summer. Mm-hmm. Black Widow would then presumably be going on to Disney Plus this fall, which might drive people there. So yeah, a lot of pressure on Mandalorian. Show does not seem bothered by that pressure.
No, and we should say that, while there's been these false starts and these kind of opening night jitters for a lot of these streaming services, Disney, while I wouldn't say that it has a ton of content for people outside of the Daddington Hive, has reliably just like crushed balls out of the stadium when they do put they basically had like Hamilton, Mulan, and now they'll have Mandalorian. I mean, it is there. That is a huge draw.
In the immortal words of Jim Tomey, they just mash taters.
Yeah, that's right.
Lot of when they hit big, and then they strike out, or they're just not getting that many turns at the plate. 2 directions to go in. We are going to be talking about The Boys later, right? But
we are the first 3 episodes.
I have 2. We could talk a little bit more about The Walking Dead since you brought it up. But I do have some Star Wars business. So you tell me where you want to go next.
I thought you were going to bring up Bob Woodward.
Yeah. So the analogy was that at the end of the trailer, a giant worm emerges from the sand, and you're like, oh no! Here's some big news. There's worms now. And that's like dropping a new book. You with me?
Yeah. This is working for me. What was the Star Wars stuff you wanted to talk about?
Okay, so we have to talk about this. As the internet's leading Rise of Skywalker podcast, I think we have to talk about this interview with Daisy Ridley that kind of made some waves on the internet, where she's asked
Josh Gad, right?
By the way, why? I don't know the context.
But he's been doing like a bunch of interview shows over the course of quarantine, I think, right? Like Alone Together or Better Together.
He's interviewing people?
Yeah.
Great. Fine.
Yeah, no, like he got the Goonies back together.
Keep it moving, Gad. That's great. We all got to hustle. Just don't make a pop culture podcast with your pal. That lane is filled.
No one else does that.
No one else does that. And so he has Daisy Ridley on the Zoom, and he's basically asking her about the big reveal. And sorry, people who are for some reason saving Rise of Skywalker, we're going to talk about it. That the Rey character turns out to be she's a Palpatine.
Yes.
And that's the big reveal.
Yeah.
And in it, good-humored, good-spirited Daisy says that not only was that not clear from the beginning, as I think anyone who watched Force Awakens and The Last Jedi would know, that for a long time, it was either that she was a Kenobi or she was, as Rian Johnson really seemed to prefer, no one.
Yeah.
It's that during the filming of the third movie, they kept changing their mind. So there are scenes that she performed in that movie where she herself wasn't sure of what this was. And so I think that I speak for everyone when I say, what the fuck?
Yeah, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
This is probably the last couple of weeks. I know this seems like a hyperbolic, but is this as low as Star Wars stock has ever been?
I mean, let's reframe the Mandalorian conversation. Other than that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's really low right now between...
So I'll reframe that. Is this as low as the stock has ever been on new Star Wars? Mandalorian to me is like, it's like watching rep theater Star Wars. It's like, they're playing the hits. Like, even though it's expanding on some of the stuff from the original trilogy,
right?
I still feel like it's very much rooted in that aesthetic. Whereas I don't know, between the John Boyega stuff from a couple weeks ago, and Daisy Ridley was not trying to like take shots. I don't think. I think she was just like, there were points where I did not know what I was acting in this, which is not dissimilar from what happened in the first movie. I think where there were lots of things that they shot or lots of things that were written that they then wound up reconstructing, whether in reshoots or edits or whatever. I can't think of a time in the last 8 years or whenever however long it's been since they revived this franchise that I'm like, wow, Star Wars is in bad shape. And I wonder whether or not, to the extent that you were able to say something like this, would you buy the dip here? Is there nowhere to go but up?
I don't know. And here's why. Specifically, we need to talk about this again, the J.J. Abrams conundrum of all this, right? Because in a lot of our conversations about the Kathy Kennedy tenure over Star Wars and the last few years, we have held up JJ, who I'm calling JJ, we don't know him, probably doesn't want to speak to us, as the kind of like steady hand on the rudder, right? Like he is the guy that they are comfortable handing these giant franchises over to. It's happened before with Star Trek. After he relaunched the series, they begged and he came back, because he was perceived as much more reliable in all ways, artistically, creatively, and I think financially than Colin Trevorrow, who originally had the job. But are we sure about this? Here's my question for you. Because in public, and probably in private too, on set, he conducts himself like Spielberg, right? He has the little glasses and he's very calm and seems to be well liked by everyone and people trust him implicitly. But you put this cat under center, he's Ryan Fitzpatrick, okay? This guy is a gunslinger. It's insane the way that he operates. And if you think back, he has always been this way. I mean, his belief in the creative process.
He's like Brett Favre if he had 75 receivers, and not in a good way. I mean, he's like Brett Favre where it's like all of the chaos, but going in 100 different directions.
But also profoundly does seem to believe, and this has been borne out by projects ranging from Mission Impossible 3 to even back further than that to Lost. And from when people talk, and they talk positively about this and what people have worked with him, he believes that the chaos and the we'll find it as we go is essential to the process.
Yes.
Are we sure that's a good idea?
I'm not going to blame JJ for what seems to have become standard practice on blockbusters, which is like
that's my next question. Yes.
We write on set, we write according to all sorts of different rationale. Maybe it's because we only have this performer for so long during the shoot, or we're going to get them back later, or there's already a feeling from looking at the dailies that this needs to go in a different direction, or we've decided that it needs to be darker or lighter, or now it's Guardians of the Galaxy, or now it's not. And I think that Star Wars was one of the first times where I remember, when you watch those original films, especially the first 3, you just feel like and I'm sure that there was tons of enormous changes at the last minute going on those movies, but you feel like you were watching something that was fashioned out of whole cloth with a purpose in mind, with something that George Lucas wanted to say, and he had thought through everything about it. And the plot, such as it is, doesn't really get in the way of the world building. The plot is relatively easy to follow in those movies. The narrative chaos that comes along with, and I enjoy myself while watching J.J. Abrams movies, but when you try to explain what happens in a J.J. Abrams movie, it's just not really very good storytelling and in a very classical way. Now, it can be an enjoyable experience, but to get 3 movies into the most substantial and not expensive, but one of the most significant stories that we've had in the last 40 years, and just kind of be like, I'm not really sure, we'll figure it out as we go along, it's so foreign to me.
But it's and to do it in 5 years with pre-announced release dates without a plan or an idea. And I think that you're right. I think it's important to not lay the blame at the person who seems uniquely wired to function like this. It is this larger circumstance, which is the Walt Disney Company paying billions of dollars to buy Lucasfilm and then immediately needing to show a return on that investment. And so it's setting up this impossible timeline. Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And it's also the case that, this is well documented, that with the original trilogy, like Lucas wasn't sure that they were brother and sister, right? Like all these ideas that seem essential to it are not there in the first movie. I mean, they make out, right? And it leads to questions like, after we were done talking about the death of Halloween, my older daughter is planning to watch Return of the Jedi for the first time and asked me, she loves talking about Star Wars, and asked me, who do you think Leia likes more, Han or her brother? And I was like, let's unpack this. So clearly there's a lot going on there. But what I will say about particularly this Daisy Ridley thing that really, really bothers me, and that movie, it's like total failure still bothers me clearly. But so you have your heroine of the trilogy that should be driving it and driving audiences, engagement and relationship. And you have no idea who she is or why she's doing anything because you haven't decided yet. Okay, fine. I'll accept that in the corner that's been either you painted yourself into or that you just chose to sign up for the corner. Mm-hmm. Fine. Her being no one is a bold choice. One that obviously from our love of The Last Jedi, that's the one
polarizing one. Yeah.
Polarizing, but that's the one that we kind of liked. Having her be a Kenobi is a relatively safer choice, but also one that has intra-corporate potential, because then the Obi-Wan series that you're inevitably making and that is still, sort of tied up in some version of pre-production has somewhere to go, because that means either he had a kid or other people, whatever.
Yeah, it essentially becomes the crown.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah.
The decision that she's a Palpatine is precisely the kind of 4 a.m. bro, get a load of this edgelord thinking that ruins everything. It is the kind of idea that feels risky and dangerous when you have your back against the wall and you want to surprise everyone because you don't want to necessarily tell the best story. What you want to do is defeat Reddit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it actually, it's an idea that feels so good because it's actually bad. I defy anyone months after this movie was released and we torched it to explain what's interesting about her being the somehow cloned great granddaughter of a villain that was presumed dead that we didn't even know had relations with people. Like what is the value in that? I don't understand it. And so that's more than anything else why this fills me with it. Just why would you end up in a situation where you make a decision like that? Yeah,
I was just thinking about, because I this sort of ties into Dune, but I was texting with our buddy Sam Donsky the other day because he and I were discussing whether or not, I mean this with all due respect, whether or not Oscar Isaac blew it. Like whether or not Oscar Isaac had
great question,
this great career ahead of him, and he wound up doing like X-Men, Apocalypse, and being tied up for most of the decade, kind of running on screen and being like, where are you going in Star Wars movies instead of, making Llewyn Davis, I guess. I don't know. I think that sometimes it's a little confusing as to what is a bad choice made by an actor versus just bad circumstances, know? And I think that you and I love the Apocalypse story. There's a world in which the X-Men Apocalypse movie is great, it's a great story to be told.
Which world is that? And can I go there? Because I'm done with this one.
But I was thinking about, we were talking a lot about him. We were talking about Fassbender and these actors who I think towards the beginning of, like 15 years ago, when you watch Hunger and Shame and you're like, Fassbender might be the best actor alive. And then you're like, but what he's going to do is play young Magneto and then Assassin's Creed and 2 Alien movies. And the same thing was for Oscar Isaac, where it's like, if you see some of his earlier work, and I know he got like kind of more of a late start, he's done some amazing shit, but you're also like, how much more amazing stuff could you have done if you hadn't been in 3 of these or 2 of these or whatever? Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this up is because it kind of bums me out that if people are going to give over so much time to these things, that you just don't make them good. Just make them good. Like you can make a quality. Look at fucking Dune. Like Dune might have problems when it comes out, but you can tell that is like, there was a vision involved there. And all of the people that he got to be in the movie, like obviously bought into the way that he saw that world and gave him something in return. I'm not saying that there was never a vision involved for the Star Wars movies, and they're completely different projects. But I just get a little disappointed where it's like, so like we're just going to lose these actors for 8 years to a movie that might actually wind up just driving off the road. I hear that. I don't think the time commitment is as great as all that. They all operate under different timetables and shoot in different places. To be adjacent to the MCU, for example, just requires a couple first class tickets to Atlanta and back. But I'm starting to think that the MCU, the way that they've done everything, is now the exception, not the rule. I think that's probably right. I think the other thing to remember with actors like Fassbender and Isaac is they played the only game that's open at the casino. You know what I mean? Like if you are an actor like those two and they are not, they each took big swings to be this, or at least Oscar Isaac was denied it when Tony Gilroy couldn't cast him in our favorite movie, Bourne Legacy, as the lead. If you are not a leading man, of which there are fewer and fewer, but you are an interesting, good-looking actor, your choices are to just keep working, but also occasionally do one for them, right? To keep your name out there, to keep in the conversation, to contribute to society or whatever. The benefit of being a handsome man between the ages of 20 and 75 is that you will always get more chances, and you can always play the romantic lead or the action lead no matter what, no matter when in your career. Right. It's not the case for interesting actresses. Just watch the Kaminsky Method if you don't believe Andy. But also, like, since we keep mentioning Obi-Wan, I mean, like, Ewan McGregor is just going to work forever. He's a talented guy. He's a good-looking guy. Clearly, all he wants to do is ride motorcycles and make shows about riding motorcycles. That seems to be his predominant passion in life. But every so often, someone will be like, that's the guy. That's the guy to build this thing around. And then he'll get to go do it. But to the point behind your point, Poe Dameron or whatever, that's not a character. No, it's not. No, he's supposed to buy it in the first movie.
And there was no reason for him to continue to exist other than, hey, cool, Oscar Isaac, that's a good action figure to have. And Rian Johnson tried to give him an arc that might lead to something with this whole battle with Laura Dern in the second movie. And then JJ, because I think this is what he really gets off on, is how can I make him a character while also bringing this 9-movie series to a close? And I'm going to give him a love interest and a planet and and just basically trying to problem solve out of it. Yeah, so it's a bummer. I don't know if it was a bummer for him because I think his career's not
I don't
hurt
mean to
for it.
sound like I mean, Oscar Isaac has been in a bunch of like really cool, great stuff, and he has been the best thing in those things. I mean, Llewyn Davis is just a phenomenal work, and I think I was just Ex Machina, Show Me a Hero is awesome. Like I kind of just wish we had 5 more of those, and maybe he could have been like the best part. I wish we would have been like left wanting more Oscar Isaac in Star Wars, and been like, oh man, I wish he had been in the other movies, but he was great in that first one.
But since we're talking actors in these situations, what do you then make of Gosling, right? Who has all the advantages, all the talent, looks, all the offers. He has resisted being a part of this marketplace, right? He just isn't in Deadpool 2. He hasn't taken on a superhero part. He chose to do what we're saying is a model. He did the new Blade Runner movie, which is something with style and vision, and we liked a lot, but didn't really land with what any of its backers thought it would land with. So, do you feel like?
I mean, he's playing it about as well as you can play it.
Isn't that the Fassbender Oscar Isaac career?
Yeah, I mean, he's basically doing the early. I mean, he's kind of more following the DiCaprio model, where he's just reliably working with filmmakers that he loves, and that are on the upward trajectory. So he's working with Villeneuve, he's working with Damien Chazelle, he's working with Derek Cianfrance or whoever, and he's just like doing these things. And then when he does something that's like quote unquote one for them, it's something like Nice Guys, which is like a throwback foul mouth buddy cop movie. So I personally like adore that career path, but I mean, obviously, like if Michael Fassbender and Oscar Isaac want to be in X-Men movies, it's not like you and I didn't just spend an hour talking about X-Men with Concepcion. I mean, obviously we like that stuff.
By the way, the actor who you're talking about, who's done both, who low-key has the best career, is Adam Driver, who has done the DiCaprio thing, as you're saying, and has worked with Spike Lee and Baumbach and John Sayles and Soderbergh and Spielberg, and I'm not naming, I'm forgetting people, and was in 3 Star Wars movies. You know what I mean? He gave those Star Wars movies a degree of gravity that I don't know that they would have had without him. Yeah. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes of season 2 of The Boys. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Heineken. Heineken would like to remind you that it's time for seasonal beers again. That's right. If you thought a cold, crisp summer Heineken was something, just wait till you taste the Heineken fall lineup, or autumn, depending on your zip code. Is it a new product? No, just the same great tasting lager that's perfect for any season. I cannot wait to transition to fall or autumn or whatever, personally. It's been a long summer here in Los Angeles, but Heineken has kept me cool. But I plan on keeping the regimen going once the temperatures drop a little bit and it becomes a little bit more, at least some semblance of leaves blowing around, get a little fall going. I'm still going to go to the Heineken as my go-to beer. Heineken Original Lager is made with pure malt and their famous A yeast, which makes Heineken an all-season, all-the-time kind of beer. So pick up a pack or get it delivered, whatever your style, and drink responsibly. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Quibi. Missing a little thrill in your life right now? Look no further. Wireless is coming, and it's available only on Quibi, a new streaming platform that offers fresh, original shows created and produced by Steven Soderbergh of Haywire and Ocean's 13. Comes a survival thriller like no other, set high in the Colorado mountains. Follow Ty Sheridan as he plays Andy Braddock, a college student stranded in a blizzard after crashing his car on a snowbank with nothing but his phone to keep him alive. Experience this heart-pounding race against the clock from dual perspectives as you simultaneously watch what's happening to Andy in the real world and the events transpiring on Andy's phone. Catch Wireless on September 14th only on Quibi. That's Quibi, spelled Q-U-I-B-I. Download the Quibi app now and get a 2-week free trial. All right, Andy.
we have a show to discuss, which we will probably be talking about for the next couple of weeks. You know, you have...
Is it the Daryl and Carol spinoff? Because you teased everybody. Okay, we're going to talk about The Boys, but I'm sorry. I got to grab the wheel for 1 second here and ask you a question. The Walking Dead, a show that we don't watch anymore, but again, this is pandemic summer, baby. We could talk about anything we want. Is going to end after season 11, sometime in like 2022.
Yeah.
Right? With 31 more episodes.
30 more episodes, yeah.
It is, there's another spinoff about younger people in this world coming this fall. Mm-hmm. There is a now announced anthology series that'll do the thing that we and other people have been talking about back when we were engaged with the show, which is basically Tales from the Walking Dead universe. But the biggest news, and then there's still those like Rick Grimes movies that they said they were going to make that they haven't made yet. But I need you to explain something to me, Chris, as just like the zombieologist of this podcast. They're ending the Mothership show, which is still, no matter what, even if it, you know, the attrition is like 10% of the audience every year, it's still by a large factor the most popular, profitable thing on AMC.
For sure.
They're ending the Mothership, but they are immediately starting a new show starring number 1 and number 2 on the call sheet of the Mothership. So this is really interesting to me because they cannot feasibly wrap up the Mothership show by saying, guess what, guys, we cured zombies, because it's too important. I mean, right. Scott Gimple's job used to be the showrunner's job. Now is he's head of the Walking Dead universe for AMC. Is his job just to keep this train moving? So you're worried about what happens when they drop the vaccine. That's my biggest concern across fictional and realistic platforms. My question is it related to royalties that they're ending the main show? Because otherwise, a new show set in the same universe starring the number 1 and number 2 on the call sheet of the previous show run by the same person.
I know exactly how this is going to happen, even though I know that there's probably like a graphic novel roadmap for this and I haven't read those graphic novels.
No, the comic ended.
Okay, so the comic ended. And do Carol and Daryl have like a fixed ending in that?
They diverged so long ago from what I understand.
So here's my take. I think that they will get whatever closure they need on this era of The Walking Dead. But Carol and Daryl say to each other, you know what? We've been fighting this for so long. We're not built for going back to normal. And you and I are going to go out and there's like a quest that we need to complete, whether it's finding ourselves or finding something else. And they're just going to send those two people back out on the road. And if it's foreign to us because the amount of episodes Walking Dead has left are like twice as long as any show that I like has had on air. Like, I don't think there have only been 30 episodes of Ozark, you know, like I just can't even fathom.
There were only 9 episodes of Watchmen and there are 30 more. Yeah. More. Here are, okay.
So my point is basically like, I think that this is almost like going back to, you have to almost take your mind back to like the 80s to really understand what they're doing with The Walking Dead, to understand the significance of the franchise, obviously, to a channel. And like you're saying, if the attrition continued apace, Walking Dead would still be an enormous financial boon for AMC. Just based on like reading Bloomberg, you can see that. So even if that attrition continued, when you take the two most beloved characters who are just like themselves self-sustaining batteries of conventions all over the country when we can meet in convention halls, they're just going to keep doing it. And Norman Reedus is basically like Ewan McGregor, where he's like, I just like riding my bike.
That's
and if
what
you
I was
need
about
me to
say.
show up, if you need me to show up and grimace and shoot a crossbow at a dude wearing zombie makeup, like cut the check.
I am so mad that you stole the one piece of information I learned today, which is that Norman Reedus is coming for Ewan McGregor's side hustle. Norman Reedus also has a I Like to Drive Motorcycles show. Should the two ever meet, they would either engage in blood combat or maybe they would get a tandem bike and ride off together.
It's too bad that Ewan McGregor's motorcycle show is on Apple Plus, because if they were free agents, you could just imagine the cross promotion that we could get going.
Oh my God.
Of just these two guys meeting somewhere on their This Way Up and This Way West, or Long Way Up, or whatever the Ewan McGregor show is called. Yeah, the synergy is right there.
Side note, are you as disappointed as I am that we were unable to attend our favorite annual event, the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally this year? Because it was a scheduling thing.
That is Carol and Daryl Khan.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the last thing about this. I promise. There's only two versions of Carol and Daryl that interest me.
Did you see Bone Thugs apparently played that rally?
It's great. I mean, no, but just feed me this content.
Sure.
I love it. Me, the target audience for the Walking Dead expanded universe. Here are the two versions of it. One would be they drop the vaccine. They cure zombieism.
Yeah.
And Carol and Daryl are still war ready.
That's what I'm saying.
They have spent, yeah. So what? So this is what your pitch
They're
was.
like fucking Renner in Hurt Locker. Like they can't be in the supermarket aisle.
That I would watch. The only other one would be if they, at the end of the Walking Dead Mothership show, they grew tired of their time in Georgia and decided to move back to the other side of the country and host an advice call-in radio show in their native Seattle. That would be the type of spinoff that I could support. Okay, now we can talk about the show we're going to talk about.
This show is fucking entertaining. I really want to have like a really... I wanted to have a much more nuanced, incredible take about the boys, but I think that I can be forgiven because that's not what this show is. I don't know that I've seen anything in a long time where I've been like, this is so basely playing to the 13-year-old in me, but makes me feel good about that kind of pandering because it's also a satire of that person. And that has been very like enjoyable. So I watched the first 3 episodes over the last couple of days. I'm sure many people did. We're going to get into some plot details, but Andy, what was your takeaway from the first 3 episodes?
Well, I think the first thing that I was really impressed with, and as people have been following this riveting journey of mine over the last few weeks, was just, all in on the show. And I was excited to get more episodes. So I really devoured them. It was especially fun to see the show begin to flex a little bit, not in terms of its budget or its ambition to be hyper violent or super gross or all the other superlatives that you can throw at it. The media satire part of it was pretty underplayed in the first season. I'm not necessarily mad at that. Again, like there's a version of this show in different hands that is explicitly a very vicious, almost not even satire, just almost complete takedown of our corporatist celebrity-driven culture. This is not that show, and I think it's probably better for it because what it is first and foremost is a deeply entertaining week-to-week television show.
Yeah.
That's it. What it is at its bones. But because the first season did a lot of the heavy lifting, that heavy lifting is kind of almost a cliche. It's not even that it was that heavy. It just sort of thoughtfully laid down some I-beams. Is that what you do when you build stuff? I'm not really a doer. You know what I mean? But like Laz Alonso's character, like Mother's Milk, he has a wife. He has a daughter. Now, every time we see him... He has an
incredible collection of rap t-shirts.
Oh my God, his t-shirts is phenomenal. I'm glad you mentioned that. But so that they take great pains to introduce them and have him take it away. So now we know what drives him. You know what I mean? It's really just basic it is also, stuff.
It's like when they go the full hour, and I think I texted you and was like, I'm glad that this is a weekly show because these episodes are long, and I don't end them always saying the next one up. Now, it's funnily, I should mention that is apparently a very big point of contention with a quadrant of boys fans who are like, give me the fucking season. It's done. Just like shoot it into my jugular. Yeah. Online, they're apparently like as a movement to release the whole thing.
What do we call boys fans? Do we call them boy heads? Because I believe that was
just boys, because that's who they are.
Yeah, that's fair. Boyheads, I believe, is the fan group for the short-lived NBC sitcom About a Boy. So I feel like they're going to have to hash that one out. Go on.
That's a very niche reference. These episodes definitely feel long, but I think the length of them goes to what you're saying. They're spending all that time so that you actually do care about Starlight and Huey. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
It's so... I feel totally manipulated in the best way, and I feel great about it. there is no one that I'm being, no relationship, no emotional connection, no backstory is being forced on me. It was all laid in a quote unquote appropriate way so that now I'm ready to engage. And what I meant by all that work being done in the first season, what that allowed them to do was, I think, start to feel a little bit more confident with the other part of the equation, so that the translucent funeral and the songs, right? And then the whole parody of Media Day in the second episode.
Yeah, the junkets.
Our pal just literally crushing it in a lot of different ways. Aya Cash, delivering the takedown of the director of the action movie in episode 3. If the show led with that stuff, I don't think it would be a successful show.
Yeah, but then they back into some pretty, I don't know if trenchant's the right word, but like the way in which in these first 3 episodes, Vought gets exposed and then just kind of stands pat and navigates through that controversy is not unfamiliar right now with the way in which people are handling controversies.
I just think I agree, but I also think that it speaks well of this sounds so boring to say it, but like the management structure of this show, that they seem to know where their strengths are. And so that those things are allowed to happen and be there, but it's not about that primarily. You know what I mean? Like you can get the corporate farce, but you also get a speedboat driving through a whale.
Yeah. And that was what I wanted to bring up, the whale. Quite a scene. There's a couple of moments. There's the speedboat driving into the whale and the whale exploding, and Jack Quaid's character Huey being enmeshed into the whale's insides and just wanting to stay there. And very funny, Butcher calls him Pinocchio. And then also I was really struck by the Jennifer Esposito's head exploding moment.
Yeah, that was a bummer. Yeah.
This is not a Quiet Loud Quiet show. This is not a Nirvana song. This is a Japan Droid song. This is like they turn up to 11 and they play at that volume the entire track. And do you think you will ever get bored or numb to that? And is it possible to find bigger and bigger whales to find and drive faster and faster speedboats into those whales, metaphorically speaking?
I am very interested in, I don't have an answer other than everything loses its luster eventually, especially and nothing causes something to lose luster more than continually trying to one up itself, which I think is a trap. I wish that I could recreate the facial expressions and verbal emanations that came from my wife, who mistakenly sat down on the couch with me when I was watching the 3rd episode, just in time for the whale, and her time with the show ending at the moment that I ripped the brother's hands off of his wrists, or broke them backwards.
And lived up to her name Stormfront with her comments.
So that has a limited shelf life, and yet the show understands that is its lifeblood, pun intended. I don't know. I mean, I think that they're doing a lot of all the good work we keep referring to and talking about, I think is intentionally being done to act as a counterweight. Because it can't just be one thing, but inevitably the show is, as you said, it is completely over the top. First and foremost, that is what it is. And so in the early going, it can lead to, delicious, unsurprising, but still, itch scratching moments. Like, Homelander's going to push his kid off the roof. Mm-hmm. Like everybody knows that, everybody making the show, everybody watching the show. But when he does it, you get that visceral reaction.
Yeah.
That makes you want to. And this is horror movie 101. This is action movie 101. You want the revenge. You want the counterpunch, right? And then it's coming. If the show is committed to Homelander just being, the elephant in every room for 9 seasons, that's going to be tough. Mm-hmm. But the show does seem nimble enough, and Amazon's strategy with it, both not just releasing it weekly, but also giving it the early renewal. They seem to have a sense of what they've got here and how they can continually reinvent and repopulate it, because that is one thing, that this show has in common with the show I insisted that we talk more about, even though I don't know if you're interested in talking about it, the Walking Dead universe. These shows could reinvent. You could see how they could keep reinventing themselves. You know what I mean? Like there can always be new members.
Well,
of
The Walking
Seven.
Dead has when are we going to get the cure or whatever? And are we ever going to be safe? Like, that's driving this show.
I'm sorry. Are you talking about a show? Those sounded very familiar to me, those parameters that you just set up.
I was watching this, it's the off-camera show, and it's this guy, Sam Jones. And you could watch a lot of these interviews on YouTube. They're shot in black and white, and usually with these actors, but he gets really good stuff about craft and technique out of actors. But he was talking with Seth Rogen about what he and Evan Goldberg have learned over the years. And one of the things that Seth was talking about was the difference between story and plot. I wanted to ask you about this as somebody who's probably thought a lot about this with Briar Patch. You're going to be like, sorry, was I supposed to be thinking about that?
No. I'm just trying to get home for dinner.
No. So he was basically like, super bad. The plot is, will these guys lose their virginity? The story is these guys realizing that they are going to not be together in college,
Right.
And that basically you do a switcheroo at some point and make the audience realize I care about this. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to map that. I know that those guys are only EPs on The Boys, and Rogen shows up in a cameo in this season. But I was trying to think about like what the story is of The Boys. Like, what are we supposed to actually care about in this show? Because this show is almost not mocking you for caring, but it lampoons a lot of personal investment in these superhero stories. It's like making fun of, like, you think you're idealizing this person, but they're actually a monster. What do you think is the story of The Boys? Because the plot is the plot, and it's Vought, and it's Compound V, and it's all this conspiratorial Department of Defense crap and all that stuff that's flying around. Is the story really, can Huey and Starlight have like a normal relationship? Can these people be family? Or what do you think you're getting out of it beyond the kind of flashbang of what you see on screen?
I think that, again, the work of giving everyone that emotional anchor is both noble, but also to some degree is hiding the fact that this show is primarily its premise, right? Which is why it can probably run on for many, many years while swapping out the faces and names. You could, if you squinted, say, oh, it's a fascinating layered critique of the impossibility of a traditional emotional interior life in a world that is so dominated by the external and corporate interests, et cetera, et cetera. But really what we're saying is Butcher wants his wife back, or Huey wants to have a girlfriend, and Mother's Milk wants a family, or Kimiko wants, well, she did want her brother, whatever. Like, everybody has the thing that they want that this circumstance is forbidding them from having. And you could then say, that Homelander is similar and Lady Maeve is similar. They all just kind of want normalcy. So that is, but that's a lot of dancing to say that unlike a movie, which, could tell one story, this is going to throw a lot of little stories at you in service of the one big plot that's going to go on indefinitely. And maybe I'm just sort of spitballing here, but maybe that's just the way it goes for the type of shows that are built to go long term, like Grey's Anatomy, right? Like, there are 1 million soap operatic stories, but really it's about how people exist in the high pressure environment of a hospital. Right.
I have one last question about Boys for you. We could talk about whatever you want, but
I want to talk about the Walking Dead expanded universe.
Do you think there's ever any consideration when Giancarlo Esposito gets cast for a role where they're like, what if we put him in Crocs and cargo shorts?
I've been thinking a lot about this now.
Like, he obviously is mesmerizing. He's very good in The Boys, but he is just so far doing Gus, right?
Yeah. It's an incredible thing to be an actor, a performer who is so good and so beloved for doing something that people want to pay you a lot of money to do the thing. Why? Well, an actor wants to work, an actor wants money, and that they should have those things. I guess I wonder why, if you have the opportunity to cast people, you want to hire someone to just do a cover of their greatest hits. My hope is that maybe there'll be more to it forthcoming.
Sure.
Your question about the Crocs is so relevant because, again, on our mailbag for Labor Day, we talked about some recommendations, and I was talking about how good Mark Maron's podcast has been. The Giancarlo Esposito episode is so good and so interesting because this dude is riding out the pandemic in my adopted hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he bought a house, to live in. And he says to give it to one of his kids after he's done shooting there. But basically, he didn't want to be in hotels anymore while making Better Call Saul. This dude spends the majority of his time talking, explaining how this small town in New Mexico has the largest Sikh community in America. And he met a guy who's a Sikh family who are beautiful musicians because they attended a screening he was at, and he felt their energy emanating from behind him, and that he has his favorite yogic retreats up in Taos. And then his whole, his mom did a cabaret show with Josephine Baker, and he was born in Switzerland. And this guy should be in Crocs, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I first met him as bugging out and doing the right thing. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, there's so many shades to this dude, and he's just fucking nailing every scene. Like this, the scene he does with Homelander is so good. The press conference he does with Aya at the end of 3 is so good. Like he's just fucking nails. But I'm just like, I would love to see this guy, like if he just walked on screen and he was just dressed like fucking Guy Fieri once.
Well, it's odd because, and this is something, we could talk to Aya about it, hopefully, or we could talk to Eric Kripke if he comes on the show at some point. But a large part of the show, I mean, the characters, it's a very delicate line, but a lot of the characters are doing a bit, right? Like, and that's baked into the characters themselves, where the guy who speaks French, his name is Frenchie, right? And so without much familiarity with the comic, there are archetypes, and they're intentionally archetypes that then they're trying to do something slick or sly with underneath it. But Carl Urban's performance as Butcher is a lot of fun, where he's doing this big accent and always, he works a bit blue, let's say.
Yes.
But do we want 7 seasons of this Cockney accent? I'm not sure. Similarly, casting Aya and then letting her do something that is very similar at times to Gretchen from You're the Worst, but with fascist tendencies, is awesome. But the show does seem to, what I'm trying to say is they do seem to be embracing the hiring of people to play the hits.
Sure. And
then we will see over the course of the season, and this season will be the test case for it, if they then want to.
It's hard to lose money giving people what they want, though.
Yeah, well, this we rarely talk about shows.
And anyone who knows me knows that I've been asking for a speedboat to drive into a whale for a while. And so
we rarely talk about shows that give people what they want.
Yeah, that's true.
Our show, the long-running podcast, The Watch, itself almost never does that. So forgive us as we stumble our way.
We talked about Walking Dead, Star Wars, and The Boys. What more do you want?
Yes, and we talked about them in the ways that many people who engage with fans podcasts do, where I believe I referred to J.J. Abrams' decision-making as akin to a 4 a.m. edgelord. And said that the only way I would come back to The Walking Dead is if they recreated Frasier.
Yes,
so
that's true.
Once again, you're welcome. I have nothing else to say to our listeners.
Just as a heads up, I guess I should have said this at the beginning of the show. So we're going to talk about The Boys, I would imagine, once a week. It's not that
people might not realize they dropped the first 3.
Yeah, and now the fourth one's going up tonight on Thursday. So we'll keep up The Boys
this
talk
weekly going forward.
A couple other shows to keep your eye on for the next couple of weeks. So we're gonna keep doing some Boys stuff. Hopefully, have a pretty cool guest coming next week. I would recommend that you check out We Are Who We Are, which is coming out on HBO pretty soon, and that's the new series from Luca Guadagnino, starring Jack Dylan Grazer and Chloe Sevigny. It's set on a military base in Italy. It's pretty great. And we've also talked about Third Day, which is, I think, a week from Monday. So a couple of shows to keep your eye on. That's on HBO as well. And I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of other stuff coming.
Fargo's coming.
And Fargo. That's right. And Fargo. Did they finish Fargo?
Yes, they finished it this week.
Okay. Congratulations to those guys.
I know. Good job, everybody.
Anything you want us to note to keep an eye on?
I mean, Chris, I'm watching a French series called Call Your Agent on Netflix. So
what's that about?
It's about an agency in Paris. It's really good.
You have such an interesting secret life. Why don't you talk about these things? We could talk about nonfiction if you want. I watched it 2 years ago.
No, because I watched it this week. There's no secrecy. the elapsed time between me watching this show for the first time and then just telling you about it on a podcast is 35 hours. So
the sensation that you give off when you text me and you're like, there's just nothing for me to watch.
Oh God, it was grim the other night.
And then you come out revived by the intellectual curiosity of Olivier Assayas, and you're just like, nonfiction, man. And there's another Assayas movie coming, The Wasp Network.
I love the movie Nonfiction. It's streaming on Hulu. One of our favorite filmmakers, Olivier Assayas. French movie about people having affairs and talking about the future of publishing. I mean, come on. God, I loved it. I wish it had been 20 hours.
That's the Carol and Daryl spinoff.
Oh my God, I loved it so much. But I will give you the full pitch on Call Your Agent, which is a lot of fun. It is legitimately a very fun French show about talent agents in Paris. And if it were an American show, it would probably be awful. It would, best case scenario.
I have a theory. I have a theory about you. So
is it that I like shows that are in French?
No, yes, but in much the same way where like things will happen in books and you're like, cool, this guy just packed his nose with cocaine just because somebody broke it with a shovel. Mm-hmm. And in TV shows, you'll just be like, get the fuck out of here with this. Mm-hmm. I think that if people are talking in French, you are way more forgiving of solipsistic navel-gazing bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. But there's also something, I mean, the tone in Call Your Agent is really well balanced, but there's something very charming that they're in this old building in Paris talking about like art movies and then also drinking wine at lunch. And if it was American, they would be, what did you say they were packing their nose with? Or it would be Ari Gold. You know what I mean? It just works better. But you're not wrong. I mean, I just finished the 4th Lonesome Dove book, and there are more than a few times when Comanches open the chests of their enemies and fill their chests with still smoldering coals from a campfire.
Right. Well, it's the Francis Malman method.
Chef's table, Comanche Nation. I don't necessarily want to see that on TV. You're right. And,
but if they're speaking French.
Yeah, or the Comanche tongue, which I don't understand, but maybe would add a sort of elan to it. Chris, I'll say this. No spoilers, but if you do read all 4 of those books, there is a character who has his eyelids cut off, okay? That's just something that happens to him in a book, and then it just goes on. When they adapted this book for a CBS miniseries, rest assured that detail was not included. You know what I mean? So
the thing is, back then, if something like that happened to you, you at least came out of it with a cool nickname. You know what I mean?
Like Blinky?
Like no lids or whatever. Like I think that we've lost some of that.
Okay.
Anyway.
I like the idea. Speaking personally, I would not come out of that. Were I to come out of it, you could call me anything you like.
I legitimately, just so you know, I was like, is it dark outside? I have no idea what's going on. Like I looked behind me and I was like, I couldn't believe that it was just like a white ashen sky. So
what
I think it's time to wrap up this podcast.
Kaya ended this recording 11 minutes ago.
She stopped recording after you beat shamed 20-year-olds.
Bonus content.
See you Monday, guys.